Wake up, Atlanta. It's time for coffee. Talk presented by Spotify. Fresh vibes, real talk.
Let's get started, shall we?
Yeah.
Good morning, folks. Welcome back to another exciting episode today. This is Coffee Talk in the Morning, presented by Spotify. I'm Kennedy Lucas, and boy, howdy, we have a great one for you today. Okay, so here's something to think about. The Iron Throne might be the most dangerous seat in all of Westeros, not because of its sharp edges, but because of what it does to the people who sit on it. This week's episode of House of the Dragon really hammered that home.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Poor Rhaenyra. She's barely had time to warm the throne, and already it feels like the entire realm is conspiring against her. Emma Darcy's performance really captured that sense of isolation and frustration. It's like she's fighting a battle on every front, and no one's got her back.
Right. And the episode wasted no time showing us just how precarious her position is. She's dealing with enemies who refuse to stay defeated, allies who are abandoning her, and even her own husband isn't being entirely truthful. It's like the Iron Throne is cursed to make every victory feel like a loss.
And then there's Ormond Hightower. What a character. James Norton is absolutely crushing it in that role. Ormond is such a perfect mix of calculated and unhinged. He's not just an antagonist, he's a full-blown villain, and every scene he's in feels like it's crackling with tension.
Oh, absolutely. That scene where he forces Darren to execute Kat's brother was just chilling. You could see how much it affected Darren, but at the same time, he's so conditioned to obey his uncle that he doesn't even hesitate. It's such a twisted echo of Ned Stark's lesson about executions in the very first episode of Game of Thrones.
And the hypocrisy of Ormond is just staggering. He denounces dragons as abominations, but he's perfectly willing to use their power when it suits him. And then there's Tessarion, Darren's dragon, just casually flaming and eating a corpse. It's such a stark reminder of how dangerous and unpredictable dragons are, even when they're supposedly under control.
Speaking of dragons, can we talk about Caraxes, that scene in the Vale where Demon's dragon just ignores his commands and flies off to that rocky ledge? It was so ominous. And then we find out that Rhaena was the mystery rider on Sheep Stealer. That was such a gut punch. She's clearly been through so much, but the way she rejects Demon's help and flies off, it's heartbreaking.
And then Demon does what Demon does best. He lies. Bringing back the shepherd's head to Rhaenyra and claiming it was Sheep Stealer's rider. What was he thinking? Does he really believe that kind of lie won't come back to haunt him?
It's classic Daemon. He's always walking this fine line between being a brilliant strategist and a complete loose cannon. And that's part of what makes him such a compelling character. You never know what he's going to do next, and even when he's making terrible decisions, you can't look away.
Meanwhile, back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra is trying to hold her council together, but even there things are shaky. She's still relying on Mysaria, but now she's got Surtur and Manderly as her new master of coin. I liked the scene with Alan. It felt like a rare moment of connection and maybe even hope. But then there's that whole debacle with Ulf and the Queen of Bastards graffiti.
That was such a mess. Rhaenyra's decision to send the gold cloaks after the culprits without setting limits is such a rookie mistake. The brutality of their response is only going to alienate the people she needs to win over. It's like she's so focused on the big picture that she's missing these smaller but crucial details.
And then there's Aegon and Larys at Rook's Rest. Aegon's belief that Sunfire is only mostly dead is tragic and a little delusional, but it also makes you wonder, could there be something to it? This show loves to blur the lines between reality and myth.
It really does. And then there's Alicent, who's just discovered that Helena is pregnant again. She's trying to protect her daughter, but the Red Keep is such a dangerous place for them right now. It's like every character is trapped in their own personal nightmare.
Except for Kriston Cole, apparently. He's practically giddy at the news that Rhaenyra has taken the throne. His whole let us become wraiths speech, it's so dramatic, but it's also kind of inspiring. He's clearly ready to go all in on this guerrilla war, even if it's a long shot.
Yeah, you have to admire his conviction, even if his optimism feels a little misplaced. The idea of a war free from dragons is almost laughable in this world, but it does set up an interesting dynamic. It's like he's trying to fight a battle on his own terms, even if those terms are completely unrealistic.
And that's what makes this episode so compelling. It's not just about the big battles or the political scheming. It's about the personal stakes. Everyone is fighting for something, whether it's power, survival, or the people they care about. And the show does such a great job of weaving all these threads together.
Absolutely. This episode really hit a sweet spot. It gave us just enough information to piece things together without feeling like it was spoon feeding us. By focusing on the greens, it brought the stakes of the conflict into sharper focus, and you can feel the tension rippling out far beyond King's Landing and Dragonstone.
It's clear that this civil war is far from over. With Aemon missing and Ormond feverishly making plans, the board is being set for some major confrontations. And the way the show moves its characters around, creating these new combinations and dynamics, it's so satisfying to watch.
So, final thoughts. For me, this was one of the strongest episodes of the season so far. It was meaty, schemy, and full of those little moments that make this show so addictive.
I couldn't agree more. It's episodes like this that remind us why House of the Dragon is such a worthy successor to Game of Thrones. The stakes are high, the characters are complex, and the storytelling is top-notch. I can't wait to see where it goes from here.
2026 is turning into the worst year for video games in decades. I mean, just look at what's happened over the last 18 months. The PS5 and the Xbox Series X are more expensive by $130 to $300. PlayStation Plus went up. Valve finally shipped the Steam machine that costs over $1,000. GTA 6, the game that's supposed to single-handedly save gaming, is $80 and doesn't even come on a disc. Speak of this, Sony just straight up killed the PlayStation games outright. You know, that same day they also announced they're killing the PS3 and the Vita stores as well. People would heard a lot about the rent crisis and how it's pushing prices up, but there's something different happening in gaming right now. The crisis is just making it a whole lot worse. So it's Sony and Xbox compete to see who can blow things up the fastest. There's one company who's gone flying under the radar, Nintendo. You know, gutted studios, no massive layoffs, no killing pivotal games. Well, mostly. Now, sure, they did hike the Switch 2 price by a lot less than the competition. They gave everyone a 4-month heads up. I never thought I would say these words, but Nintendo kind of like the good guy right now. But I use a study to how things got so bad in 2026, you don't have to look too far back. Briefly, a decade of gaming only went up. More players, more money, pretty much every single year. Then the pandemic hit, everybody got locked inside, and the line didn't go up. It went stratospheric. Record player numbers, record spending. So, are you surprised that the gaming industry went on absolute binge? I know I did. Of games, of course. The big guys bought studios, they hired thousands of staff, and greenlit a ton of games chasing the next Fortnite. I mean, PlayStation alone committed to something like a dozen live service titles. And Sony also bought Bungie, while Microsoft bought both Bethesda and the absolutely massive Activision. The entire industry made a bet. If the pandemic wasn't a spike, it was the new level. Who's gonna tell? No lead info for this video is sourced from Matty Ball's yearly State of Gaming report. If it is on its 167-page PDF, which basically the entire gaming industry reads, and this year's edition makes the hangover incredibly clear. Things are not healthy. Also, side note, just a few months after releasing this year's report, Xbox hired him as their chief strategy officer. And for some reason, the 2026 report says that Xbox is winning. I don't know how that happened. There's one stat that makes the contraction in gaming clear. Fewer Americans game regularly today is than before the pandemic. Not before the peak, fewer than before. The sugar rush didn't just wear off. The bewilderment was started. Now, the thing is, across the entire dating industry, Redditor is actually at an all-time high, which kind of begs the question, where is all that money coming from anyway? Well, not new players. It is really about squeezing existing gamers harder, by making ending currency like V-Bucks more expensive, and really leaning on monetization like subscriptions. If you take out mobile, growing markets like China, and Roblox as a platform, all you can really have left are forever games like Counter-Strike, Fortnite, and Call of Duty. Big swings on brand new games doesn't even make a dent. Xbox's own CEO admitted they were losing 64 cents on every dollar they were investing. Meanwhile, the consequences of this huge spending binge are finally landing. There's been a truly enormous amount of layoffs across the industry. You've got huge titles like Concord straight up imploding after launch, Bungie and Turn 10, legendary studios, has largely been gutted at this point, and Xbox are spinning off studios they bought just a few years ago. 44,000 layoffs in just 4 years. And Xbox, 3,200 more. Yeah. Then add the RAM crisis to inflate hardware out of reach for most people. It just makes all these problems so much worse. Now, gaming isn't dying. This is absolutely coming off of the sugar high of happier times. Sony did this, Microsoft did this, but Nintendo kind of didn't. Now, it's not because they have a crystal ball. It's because they've already been through their own disaster, and it nearly killed them. Let's take it back to 2011. Party Rock, Wink to Hurry just got there. Let's take it back to 2011. Nintendo was coming off of the Wii and the DS, two of the best-selling consoles of all time. Oh, 250 million years confined, that money project running at full speed, Sound familiar? Then they launched the 3DS at $249, and nobody bought it. It really is one of the worst console launches in Nintendo history. Within 5 months, Nintendo does something unprecedented. Cuts the price by $80. Remember when consoles could get cheaper instead of more expensive? That price cut blew a hole in Nintendo. Nintendo's finances. In 2012, they posted their first bilingual operating loss in decades. The pressure to do what every other company does during a downturn was real. Cut staff, close studios, restructure. But instead, their CDO at the time, Satoru Iwata, cut his own salary in half. The board also took a 20 to 30% pay cuts. And then the Wii U happened, and things went from bad to worse. Now look, I'm not gonna tell the whole Wii U story again, but the numbers were truly awful. For context, the Wii sold over 100 million consoles. The Wii U sold 13. Not 113, not 13 million, they sold 13 Wii U's. Or it was 13 million, but it's basically 13, okay? So what did Nintendo do besides probably panic? Well, Iwata-san cut his salary again. Now, I don't want to overstate this because his salary was certainly not saving Nintendo. Japanese CEOs, it turned out, do not make Activision money. That's kind of the point. It wasn't a financial move, it was a message. He wanted said straight up that mass layoffs destroy inflating morale and scared developers don't make good gains. And it's a hell of a signal to say that I, the CEO of the company who got us into this nest, am going to take a cut instead of punishing employees. Imagine if certain other CEOs took that kind of approach instead of racing to see who can become a trillionaire first. This was one of the biggest generational collapses in gaming history, and it was a very, very dark time for Nintendo. Sony and Microsoft have other parts of their business to chip in when times are tough, but for Nintendo, gaming is the company. When no one buys your console, you're in trouble. Nintendo largely bailed them out of this, but picture being Nintendo in this era. The pandemic hits and the world is getting like never before. You've just gotten out of the bad times. If everyone around you is buying studios and chasing Fortnite, but you're the company that just survived a near-death experience. Going all in on risk is not in the cards. being a boring and responsible company is. And here's the funny, even with the massive success of the Switch 2, Nintendo are still being conservative. Just this month, Nintendo's current CEO was asked about employee pay, and his answer was pretty much exactly Iwata's philosophy. Saudi foundation people's livelihoods, and if pay swings around with business results, developers can't take career risks without fear of failure. Women want tiny hard response like that from Sony and Microsoft. Now, I do want to be clear that Nintendo does not deserve a free pass here. Let's not forget, this is the company that introduced the world to $8 games. Mario Kart World did it before GTA 6 was even priced. You also got an issue of game key cards, which sure, they're absolutely better than nothing, but they're also confusing and largely just a physical download code. Nintendo will also sow a fans project or an emulator into the grounds without a second thought. And personally, I still don't trust Nintendo's online at all. I mean, the account system is complicated, virtual game cards, which are not the same as game key cards, are confusing, and my wife legitimately lost a ton of her save data when at one point I changed what Switch was our home console and then it didn't sync and saved it was gone. Like, look, Nintendo's digital ecosystem is genuinely the worst in the business. But if all about context, and viewed through the garbage town lens of 2026, Nintendo doesn't actually look too bad. The Switch 2 is the second fastest selling console in US history. When they didn't know if they were going to raise the price, it was only by $50, and they gave us 4 months of warnings. And more importantly, no mass layoffs, no graveyard of bad studios. They're about to be the only game in town when it comes to physical games. Everyone else has made physical games worse and worse as games get bigger than the discs themselves, they take forever to install, and sometimes still require a business inventory download anyways. Now look, I don't think physical games are dying because players stopped wanting them. They're dying because companies make physical worse than digital. It just so happens that you make a whole lot more profit selling downloads on a store than a box on GameStop's shelf. Here's the fact, Nintendo is not a charity. They charge full price forever, they lawyer up if the wind blows the wrong way, and they re-release the same games every few years.
Hey Marcus, so you know how everyone's always talking about how games aren't what they used to be, right? Like the good old days and all that. Well, Riot's just like totally dropped this bomb with League of Legends Classic. I gotta ask, is it just pure nostalgia bait, or is there like something genuinely more to it, eh? What's the real vibe in your opinion?
Oh, Emma, it's so much more than just bait, seriously. I mean, you've hit on something real there. The nostalgia is absolutely a huge pull, but Riot's really been listening to players for years. People have been clamoring for that early League feeling, you know, that simpler time before the game evolved into, well, what it is today. And honestly, it sounds like they've tried to capture that essence, that core gameplay loop, but without totally ignoring all the good stuff they've learned over 15 years. So it's not a copy-paste of 2009, which I think is a super important distinction, right? They're calling it a greatest hits feel.
Greatest hits. I like that description, eh? So it's not a one-to-one, like carbon copy. They're trying to kind of give us the feeling of it, but maybe better. That's actually pretty smart, because I remember some of those really early days, and sometimes nostalgia can be a bit rose-tinted, you know? Like you remember the good bits, not necessarily the clunkiness. So they're not just, you know, slapping an old label on it. They're actually putting some real thought into the gameplay.
Absolutely. It's that curated experience. They wanted to scratch that itch, but still bring something new to the table and make it feel like home, you know? For veterans, it's a return, and for newer players, it's an insight into the roots. So yeah, definitely thought went into making it truly resonate and feel like the best version of that era.
Okay, so this greatest hits idea sounds pretty cool. But what does that actually mean when we boot it up, eh? Like, are we getting the actual old Summoner's Rift? And what champions are we talking about? Because League has like a zillion champions now, right?
Right? A zillion, exactly. Well, here's the thing. They are bringing back the original Summoner's Rift map, which is like totally iconic. And it's not just a straight copy either. They've targeted improvements to the lighting, textures, shadows, just to heighten the gameplay clarity. So it'll look a bit more polished, but still feel, you know, like the OG map. And champion-wise, they're launching with a roster of 60. It's the original 40 plus 20 more that came out between 2009 and 2013. So, like you'll see Ashe, Garen, yeah, but also guys like Lee Sin and Leona, who were super impactful in those early years, but weren't original launch. Oh, and get this, Old school items, runes, and masteries, they're all back, baby. It's all about those classic builds, the ones we used to, pull off back in the day.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty specific window, eh? 2009 to 2013. So it's not just like super old, it's that era when it really, really started to define itself. And the runes and masteries, oh man, I remember those. They were like so complex, but also kind of fun to mess around with. But they said they've got a simpler and faster unlock system, so that's good, right? Like, you won't have to grind forever just to get a basic page.
Exactly. That's the balance they're striking. They're giving you the feel of the old progression, the satisfaction of unlocking, but it's much faster. And everyone gets default pages from the start, so you're not totally behind the curve or like feeling punished. It's the classic flavor, but without the classic grind, which is like a huge win, you know?
Okay, so we've got the old map, the classic champions, the runes, but you mentioned modern improvements, eh? Like, what does that actually entail? Because I can imagine, like, going back to some super clunky old tech after all these years of, advances could be a real turnoff, right? No one wants a game that feels ancient.
Oh, for sure, Emma. That's absolutely key. They're not just like ripping an old version out of a vault and slapping it onto modern servers. They've integrated some critical modern updates. We're talking matchmaking improvements, right? So you're not just getting totally stomped by pros when you're just trying to relive some memories. Server infrastructure is like up to today's standards, performance improvements, modern pings, all those quality of life things that you just can't live without anymore, honestly. And here's a big one for some people: optional WASD controls. That's huge for players coming from other genres or like who just prefer that movement style. It really opens it up.
Wow, WASD controls? That's actually a pretty big shift for League, eh? I mean, I can see how that could really open it up to a new audience, or like just make it feel more familiar for people who aren't just hardcore MOBA players. So it's not just like a fresh coat of paint. It's a foundational upgrade while keeping the soul of the old game. And balance, I imagine, is a whole different beast here, right? Like, they can't just use the same balance philosophy as regular League, can they?
You've nailed it, Emma. They've explicitly stated that Classic will have its own balance philosophy. It's focused on preserving what makes it unique, which means they won't just blindly apply nerfs or buffs based on the current live game meta. It's going to be about, making those classic champions and items feel impactful and strategic within that specific era's context. That's absolutely crucial for the long-term health and authenticity of Classic, I think.
So this sounds like a pretty big undertaking, eh? And like, once it's out, how do they keep it feeling classic without it getting, stale? Are they just gonna let it sit there, or are there plans for ongoing updates and stuff? Because that's always a worry with these kinds of re-releases, right?
Oh, absolutely, not just letting it sit there. This is where it gets really, really interesting, Emma. Riot has introduced something called the Council. It's a community voting system, right? And it's designed to help guide the future of Classic. So players, we get to vote on future choices, like which champions get added next, or even which skins are made for Classic, and even gameplay changes. It's like they're really empowering the community to shape this, And the more you play and increase your Classic level, the stronger your voice becomes. It's a brilliant way to keep players engaged and feeling like they have genuine ownership over this piece of gaming history.
Wow, the council, that's super cool, eh? So it's not just like, here's our game, play it. It's help us build this thing out for the future. That's a pretty progressive approach, especially for a game with such a huge legacy. So what about progression? Like, are we starting from scratch, or do our old accounts, carry over any of that stuff? Because I've got like a bunch of champions on my main account, but if I go into Classic, do I have to buy them all again?
Good question. No, you definitely don't have to buy them all again. If you already own the 60 launch champions on your main account, you'll have immediate access to them in League Classic. Otherwise, yeah, you can unlock them through your Classic level or from the shop, which is totally fine. And those Classic levels are a free progression track, so you earn runes, masteries, IP, BE, cosmetics, all that good stuff just by playing. It's a one-time progression system, kind of like account levels, so it's straightforward and pretty rewarding.
Okay, so this sounds like it's really hitting all the right notes for both old players and potentially new ones looking for a simpler experience. This is all great, but when's this actually going down, eh? And what queues are going to be available at launch? Because, getting into a game is kind of important, like the most important part.
Absolutely. It's launching super soon, actually, on July 29th, alongside patch 26.15. So that's just around the corner, which is really exciting. At launch, they're keeping it pretty focused, which I think is smart. We're talking a single PvP draft queue, co-op versus AI for those who want to, ease back into it without the pressure, and custom games. So it's not like an overwhelming amount of options right away, but definitely enough to get everyone really stuck in and playing those classic matchups. The focus is just on that core strategic gameplay that characterized the early days, pure League.
That's pretty soon. And a draft queue, co-op versus AI, that makes sense, eh? Keep it focused. So what's your overall vibe on this, Marcus? Like, are you genuinely hyped for this? Or do you think it's like a temporary thing that'll kind of fade after the initial nostalgia rush? Because it really sounds like they've put a lot of genuine thought into it, beyond just the remember this factor.
I am genuinely hyped, Emma. I really am. I think Riot, they've learned a lot from other classic versions of games, and by making it a greatest hits rather than a single moment, and by including modern QoL updates and that community console, they're setting it up for longevity. It's not just a fleeting trip down memory lane. It's a commitment to preserving a significant piece of gaming history while actively involving the players in its evolution. It's pretty ambitious, and I think it has real potential to stick around.
We bring in good energy.
This has been Coffee Talk, presented by Spotify. From our cast, we thank you for listening.
Yeah.
May